The asset purchase program restarted in November 2019 with no specific expire date. Greece is currently not eligible to participate in the program. However, Fitch recently upgraded the Greek credit rating to BB, and the outlook is positive. Do you think Greece could catch up and benefit from the APP if it becomes eligible in the course of this year or the next?
Well, I think that the situation is quite clear. The evolution of the Greek economy is positive, and I think that this has been reflected on the upgrades, the recent upgrades by rating agencies. So once the Greek bonds have an investment grade, that I hope that it will be sooner than later, for sure, that the Greek bonds will be part of the APP program.
Greece still ranks first among the EU countries in terms of NPLs. The Greek government already passed the Hercules plan, and in an effort to reduce the stock of NPLs, and more actions are planned. Taking into account the ongoing normalization of the Greek financial sector, what are the prospects for the banks to provide the necessary efficient allocation of credit in Greece with the aim of supporting the economic activity and growth?
When you look at the evolution of the Greek economy, what you realize is that the Greek economy is performing quite well. Now Greece is outperforming the majority of the euro area peers and nations. And I think that perhaps this is because now Greece is a competitive economy, and the fiscal situation is much better than it was only 2-3 years ago. And I think that perhaps the only soft spot of the Greek economy is the situation of the non-performing loan ratio. It's very high, as you know, it's above 40%. And with such a situation, it's very difficult for the banks to accomplish the main mission of a bank, that is to lend to households and non-financial corporations. So in the ECB, we are convinced that it's extremely relevant to reduce further the non-performing loan ratio. And I think that any instrument has to be used in order to do that. With respect to the Hercules plan, I think that it's an important element, an important instrument, and we will try to do our best in order to favor the evolution of the non-performing loan ratio. So there are some legal restrictions now, but taking into consideration these legal restrictions, we believe that it's of paramount importance to continue reducing the non-performing loan situation. And I hope that the Greek banks will find the means and the instruments in order to continue disposing these non-performing loans.
From your long experience as a finance minister of Spain and your participation in the Eurogroup from 2011 to 2018, in a particularly difficult period for Greece, what does the Greek government need to do in order to persuade its European partners and achieve a reduction of the primary surplus targets from 2021?
Well, first of all, I do not want to lecture anybody. I think that each country is different. I think that the Greek government knows perfectly what they have to do. But I think that there are, two recommendations that, I think that are valid for every European country. First of all, it's very important to be competitive, and now the Greek economy is competitive. And secondly, I think that it's very important to have, a banking industry that works. So I think that it's very relevant to focus on the situation of the banks, as I have said before. And with respect to the fiscal policies beyond, the remit of the ECB, but there is also, a general recommendation, is that immediately you start to make your public finances sounder and better, immediately you start to reap the benefits. And I think that this is something that is happening now in the case of Greece. Interest rates have declined quite a lot, spreads are narrowing, and even rating agencies have started to improve, the outlook and the rating of the Greek bonds. So I think that that's the way forward.
Although there appears to be a detent in the US and China trade war, do you think that it still poses a threat to the European economy? What other risks are of concern to the ECB?
Well, the signing of the phase one of the trade agreement between China and the US, it was positive in terms of relief. You saw that markets reacted very positively because it eliminated uncertainty, in a first stage. Well, let's see what happens. What I want to say here is, regardless of the potential indirect implications for Europe of this trade agreement, what is very relevant is that we defend a rules-based multilateral trade system. We believe that that's key in order to create prosperity and welfare all over the world, and that's the approach that is defended by the European institutions, and the ECB fully agrees with that.
Is the ECB concerned about the effects of the coronavirus to the European economy?
The outbreak of the coronavirus is an important element. We have seen that the impact on equity markets and on commodity prices has been huge. So, I think that we have to be very prudent so far. We are in the first stage of, this outbreak. We know very little about, the characteristics of the virus so far. We have to learn quite a lot. And so it could be, a little bit, imprudent from my side to say what's going to be, the evolution. But if you look backwards from previous outbreaks, is that, this first stage, there are a lot of uncertainties, a lot of unknowns, and that markets and commodity prices, they do not like uncertainties. So I have full confidence that the Chinese authorities will be able to address the problem, and that the evolution of the coronavirus will be similar to previous outbreaks that we had in the past.
Are you concerned about the potential negative impact on household savings and income from the negative interest rates?
Well, negative interest rates have been a useful policy so far. They are behind the good performance of the European economy, the recovery of the European economy. But there is something that is quite obvious, and it has been acknowledged by the ECB, is that there are some side effects. And these side effects are becoming more visible and more tangible. But perhaps, the message here is that monetary policy cannot be the only instrument in place, that other policies have to play a very important role, as structural reforms or fiscal policies. So that's the main recommendation, is because it's a question of time. At the beginning, for sure that the side effects of negative interest rates were very limited, but now, as I have said before, are becoming more visible. So other policies, have to be applied, have to be pursued, because monetary policy is not almighty.
Are you concerned about bubbles in the European real estate market? And if you fear something like this, what kind of interventions would be suitable?
I think that there is not a pervasive situation of overvaluation of the real estate at all. I think that you have some pockets of overvaluation, you call it bubbles, and I think that the correct instrument to use in order to address the situation is macroprudential policies. So that's the approach. I do not have full confidence on the policy of leaning against the wind to use monetary policy to deal with this kind of bubbles. I think that monetary policy has to produce or produces effects that are pervasive, and you cannot address concrete or very specific or particular bubbles.
How important is EDIS for the completion of the banking union? Is the regulatory treatment of sovereign exposures a necessary condition to have a fully fledged EDIS? And something last, how could this impact the banks of some countries, including Italy and Greece?
Well, EDIS is key. Is the third leg, is the third pillar of the banking union. Our position in the ECB is very clear. We have always defended EDIS as a very important instrument in order to complete banking union. I think that the question of the sovereign exposure is something that we will have to analyze in order to bridge the link between the banks and the sovereigns. There was a proposal by the finance minister of Germany in order to link a sort of quid pro quo between EDIS and the sovereign exposure of the banks. Well, these are elements that we have to explore, but the important issue is perhaps to take steps in the right direction in order to complete banking union and to try to bridge the sort of stalemate situation that we have now in Europe with respect to how to complete banking union. Also, I would like to stress the importance of the capital market union. Capital market union is going to be key, mainly because Brexit is there, and we need to have much more profound, deeper, and more liquid capital markets in Europe.